for our listeners out there, as a Shopify app acquirer, how do you typically evaluate a potential target? Do you particularly have a criteria that you look for? Are there some niches that you find or functionalities that you find really interesting?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna talk about deal flow because you can go on Flippa or get in touch with Dominic, say I want to get potential deals. But let's say you have deals on the table, right? And my personal style is I don't care that much about profits from day one. I care that the company is not losing money or is not losing too much money.
Okay.
But the number one thing I care about right now is being in that blue ocean. So someone figuring something that nobody else figured out, either because everybody, was sleeping and it was a schlep idea, which is very hard, or more likely because something changed in the world and e-commerce is being done differently now. AI is a great example. Everybody's looking there, but there are also great other things that show up that something changes and people can do something now.
Hey there, Kristen Jacobson here. So here's a fun but sad fact for us. Most of the people that love our show are still not subscribed to our channel. Now, here is the deal that I'm gonna make with you. If you can find it in your heart to click the subscribe button, I promise you that we're gonna get better guests to provide more deeper insights and more practical steps in the online business M&A space. So that's the deal. If you can hit the subscribe button and also put on the notifications, we'd be really, really grateful for that. And we'll make a better show for you moving forward. Now, I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning into the Digital Dealmakers podcast powered by Flippa. And today, Kristen and I are very excited to welcome one of our guests, Ruslan Luteyski. I have known Ruslan for a couple of months now, I guess working in the industry, and it's been a real pleasure to get to know him personally, but also work alongside him on a couple of different transactions. A bit of background about Ruslan. He is an acquirer of SaaS companies himself, currently with one acquisition. He's invested in a number of companies as well as an angel investor. He's very prominent in the Bulgarian community with some entrepreneurial initiatives. He also even has time to write blog posts as well about entrepreneurship. He's also sold a company of his own, so there's he's pretty much ticked every box, to be honest. But thank you, Ruslan, for joining. Super appreciative of your time. The episode today, everyone is going to be acquiring a SaaS company from a buyer's perspective, and we're here to get some great insights from Ruslan himself. But firstly, Ruslan, I'm sure everyone listening would love to hear more about you. So, please tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, what's your journey been like in business so far, what made you get into SaaS. Please tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Dominic, for the nice words and also for inviting me on this podcast. Long story short about me, I've been playing with a computer ever since I could walk. We always had a computer at home. I've been building websites since I was 10 years old, so I've done a lot of them. I originally started my career in graphic design, UX, UI design, this kind of stuff. I've worked in a couple of startups in Bulgaria. Then I moved to Paris. I worked abroad for a while. And then one of my colleagues started doing dropshipping and started making so much money. Can I say fucking on your podcast?
Of course, it's okay.
Perfect.
It's we're not PG rated, I'd say.
Awesome. All right, so he started making so much fucking money from selling Chinese stuff that I said, okay, why am I doing design and startups, right? I need to do that. Moved into that, done some dropshipping, and then I realized, okay, I'm not at my prime here, but actually there's so many people that need tools to do better dropshipping and better e-commerce in general. And this is how I kind of started doing e-commerce tools and Shopify apps back in 2017. I've built a couple of products. I've built a company called CheckoutX, which was at the time one of the biggest alternative checkouts for Shopify. After that, I built another company called Vanga AI, which I sold last year. And now I'm looking to, start doing more of what I'm used to, and that is doing e-commerce tools and SaaS softwares, and to buy some of those. Like, I don't want to build from scratch anymore, because when you're starting from scratch, there is a lot of things that can go wrong, where if it's a real business that already has product market fit, I think it's a way better position to optimize that at my current stage. So I'm looking to buy a couple of e-com tool SaaS companies in the next couple of years.
Fantastic. Okay. And I guess that actually leads us onto a couple of questions. So we're going to kind of structure this conversation in some different topics because we want our listeners to get a lot out of the conversation, and we've kind of pathed the way of this conversation to kind of go from more of a macro perspective and then into the micro perspective. So a couple of topics are going to be about the market landscape, acquisition strategies in general, maybe not yours, probably don't want to give all your cards away, of course, due diligence, integration topics maybe, we'll see how we go there, the market dynamics, what you see is the outlook, future outlook as well, and then I think probably the most, for me anyway, the most important topic will certainly be advice for sellers, because a lot of our listeners are sellers, and I'm sure they're listening intently to know what exactly buyers are looking for, like yourself.
Yeah. I would definitely love to get your perspective on that, Ruslan, from your perspective of, obviously you're seeing a lot of businesses that are for sale, and sort of, what, I guess at the end of the day, what kind of common traits you see that most sellers sort of make as a mistake in terms of trying to sell their business, and what they could really do to, apart from actually having a great business to buy, what they could do to, make the job easier for a buyer, from your perspective too. That'd be great to get some insight on that.
Fantastic. So from the market landscape, for our listeners out there that probably don't know much about, let's say, well, I'm sure they know a bit about e-commerce, obviously, but maybe you could talk a little bit about the Shopify app ecosystem. Because when I first joined Flipper at the beginning of last year, I literally had no idea that there even were apps servicing Shopify. I thought Shopify was just an e-commerce platform that people would, basically create and then run an e-commerce store. But maybe you could get some insights into how you see the Shopify app ecosystem, and globally, whether it's Europe, US. Please give an overview.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that Shopify managed to build a whole developer ecosystem around their platform, which I believe is one of their biggest advantages now as a platform.
Yeah.
And it's probably not 50% or more of the e-commerce market, but when it comes to e-commerce tools and software, like SaaS makers, I believe it's the majority of the business out there is happening on Shopify, either directly Shopify only apps or solutions like Klaviyo or bigger companies. The majority of their business seems to be from Shopify, right? So you can think of, and I think it's a very good way to think of Shopify in a similar manner as Apple, like iOS or Android, right? It's a platform for e-commerce. They try to position themselves as the operating system for e-commerce, and basically apps are exactly that, applications that you buy and use on your e-com OS. So with that being said, what's great about Shopify, again, it's very well developed ecosystem. It's very easy to entry. There's a lot of indie developers that get into there because there are people who are willing to pay you money for software. In general, it's a great ecosystem to be in. You have exposure, you have an app store that's very high traffic, brings a lot of customers for B2B SaaS. And I think for B2B SaaS, this is the number one ecosystem right now. If you have to pick an ecosystem that has like a same type of customer, you can find it on the same place. I think most of the other B2B SaaS are more scattered, and it's kind of harder to grasp who your ICP is, how to get to them, all this kind of stuff.
Okay, and actually, just out of interest for some of the listeners that are thinking, it's like, what are some other ecosystems out there that also have an app ecosystem for e-commerce? Is it really? Would you just say Shopify dominates? Are there any others?
Yeah, so probably WooCommerce is the biggest one, kinda.
Okay.
But from everything that I talk to, like I'm gonna be super clear, not to dunk on anyone. Anyone that I know personally, besides if they're like a specific solution for like WooCommerce or something, their business is 80% Shopify, right? So at ZipChat, which is the company I acquired, we service multiple platforms, but the way we look at it, it's either Shopify or non-Shopify. This is how we split it, because it's either like the Shopify things, or we try to ship for any store that maybe it's custom, maybe it's like WooCommerce, maybe it's Wix, maybe it's something else. There are many platforms, e-commerce platforms, but there's so many, right? And them have such a well-developed ecosystem for app developers, in my opinion. Okay,
all right. And I think then kind of asking the trends and moving on to like trends and developments in that ecosystem. So, you acquired ZipChat AI, which certainly has a AI theme to it. AI seems to be, everyone is talking about it, of course. So, like, how do you see AI as a learning point or a point of advantage in the Shopify ecosystem? Maybe, please also give a plug on ZipChat AI and what it does. Are you seeing a lot of trends at the moment moving towards AI in the Shopify ecosystem?
Yeah, so regarding ZipChat, what we do in 30 seconds, we do an AI chat for your store. It's basically you can train your own salesperson and you can talk to your customers at scale, which is something you can't do right now. So right now, if you're an e-commerce owner, you only see analytics numbers, like some points somewhere moving, where with ZipChat you can talk to a majority of your customers and get so many insights, or like get to sell to them, or do like so many nuanced things that currently are not possible. So if anyone is doing e-commerce, you can check it out, zipchat.ai. In terms of trends, first I think what's more relevant is how liquid Shopify apps have become, because it's such a big ecosystem and it's so tight in terms of like types of solutions.
Sure.
It's incredibly liquid. From my perspective, I think that's one of the most liquid SaaS niches out there. Like you can buy apps, you can sell apps in less than a month if you really need to. Like there's so many potential buyers, there's so many people that want to get into it. There's so many people selling. So this is something that's changed, and like it's, from my perspective, it happened in the last couple of years, right? I never looked at my personal balance sheets. I never looked at like as a software company as something liquid, where now it's very liquid. Like I know I can get a certain multiple in 6 months time if I need to, which is amazing. Like it totally changes the game. Whereas AI, I think first OpenAI is also an interesting platform. It has nothing similar with Shopify, like in the dynamics, and we can talk about that, but I think it's gonna create a new niche probably for acquisitions. But in general, look, like the Shopify app ecosystem is so big now. I think there's more than 10,000 apps, and it's very competitive. So it's very hard to build something that already exists and to have significant traction. You can do it if you're clever, if you know good marketing tactics, or you have like a unique, fresh take on something. But it's way easier if you if you go into a blue ocean. And AI is very similar to the internet, right? You can do so many things. Most of us don't know with the existing things that are out there, like OpenAI and like all like the other platform like API providers, you can have so many creative business applications that people haven't figured out yet. And everything that you figure out, like you just go to merchants and you sell like the value. You don't compete with other apps, and that's very, very valuable and very, very high potential compared to you being app number 645 in the upsell category. So I think that's the interesting part in terms of AI.
I do have a follow-up question on that, Ruslan. So in terms of, you mentioned like marketing and products, like in terms of what you experience in this field, like would you say that the product would really come first before marketing, or marketing first then product? Because you could have the best marketing available and like do a really amazing job at marketing, but if the product sucks, I don't know, like what are your thoughts on that? Like what have you seen?
Chicken or the egg?
Yeah, it's a balance. You know, it's funny because the startup mantra is you should do marketing, don't care about the product, because the product will come. And that is true, because I do Shopify app consultations and I've done probably 20 or more. I don't have a single question on how to build my product, like zero, nada.
Yeah.
All of the topic is how do I market it. But at the same time, I believe like if your product is not 10x better than everything you're doing, then it's going to be really hard to sell. So it's some kind of a balance, right? And at least with CheckoutX, which is one of my previous businesses, we didn't do any marketing, and we had the best growth I've seen so far. Like not all my next companies were doing very aggressive marketing. We were trying a lot of things and we didn't have these results, right? And that's kind of the thing. If you have the right product at the right time that is doing something really well that people want, then marketing will just amplify it. But you still need to do marketing, because somebody else will see it and they'll make the same product and they'll market it better. So it's a balance. What's cool about Shopify, and I see many of the founders, especially like people selling, is that Shopify has an acquisition channel built into the platform. It's called the Shopify App Store. So you can list there, and if you're smart and people need your product, you'll get organic traffic, and that's something you cannot have if you just build a random SaaS that's not connected to anything, because people won't have a channel to get to it.
Do they take a percentage of revenue if you're on their app store?
They take 15%, I think, if you make more than $1 million a year.
Okay.
And majority of the businesses don't make more than $1 million a year, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're buying an app and you're making projections and it's a realistic projection that it's going to hit that, you need to adjust.
For sure. Okay, interesting. Yeah. And so if we then move along to more acquisition strategy. So, tell us, for our listeners out there, a normal day for you. I know you're juggling many balls, right? And doing a lot of different things, but if you're sitting in the seat as a Shopify app acquirer, how do you typically evaluate a potential target? Do you particularly have a criteria that you look for? Are there some like niches that you find, or functionalities that you find really interesting? Of course, different buyers like and appreciate different things, but you as an acquirer for Ruslan's portfolio, what do you value? Yeah,
so I'm not gonna talk about deal flow, because you can go on Flippa or like get in touch with Dominic, say I want to get potential deals.
Yeah, of course.
But let's say you have deals on the table, right? And my personal style is I don't care about that much about like profits from day one. I care that the company is not losing money, or is not losing too much money.
Okay.
But the number one thing I care about right now is being in that blue ocean, right? So someone figuring something that nobody else figured out, either because everybody, was sleeping and it was a schlep idea, which is a very hard, or more likely because something changed in the world and e-commerce is being done differently now.
Yeah.
AI is a great example. Everybody's looking there, but there are also great other things that show up that something changes and people can do something now. For example, Shopify changed their APIs, or Apple introduced the Apple Wallet. It's something like you can do stuff with it, right? So something changed, and somebody figured out a way to do something useful that, I think, brings value to the merchants. And it just needs someone to build a good marketing and sales funnel and to polish the product and to put it out there and to scale. This is a company that I believe I can scale, right? That's my main criteria. The company doesn't have to lose money. It has to be in a certain MRR range where I have to pay around $500,000 for the company, something like that, which is my ideal target right now. And then I look at many criteria which are like secondary, right? And I'd like to have. So for example, I care about how many direct competitors there are or indirect competitors. I care about the app rating. I care about if the app is above default when I type the category. If I type AI chat on the App Store, is Zip Chat above default or below default, where it's positioned, right? I care about platform risk, or basically what's the chance that Shopify kills this app or it gets side-blinded because of an API change, or it's because it's doing something shady, or it's because the platform is not going into that direction, this kind of stuff. What else? Let me check. I care about growth a lot, like how's the company growing, and how did they get to that point? Like, did they spend money on marketing? Do they have a very clear idea how they're getting their marketing? Is it dependent on the App Store only or not? And you were asking about...
Sorry to interject there, just on the growth. Growth in terms of what, though? Growth in terms of customers, revenue? How do you... Because, I mean...
MRR. I care about MRR.
MRR. Yep. Okay, great.
Of course. So, to some extent, right? So, I look at the business model. If it has 10 customers or like a very small amount of customers, it's a red flag. I needed to have probably at least 100. So, I know it's not just a couple of whales. But basically, it really depends on the app, right? There's apps that cost $9. There's apps that cost $1,000 per month.
Sure.
So it really depends on what they're doing, what value they're bringing, how big is the market, etc., etc.
Sure.
Ideally, I don't want apps that they're selling like $9 plans. I prefer to have at least $1,000 annual like revenue.
So high ticket. You like high ticket or high ACV?
Yeah, at least middle ticket, right? At least $1,000. Because then I need 1,000 customers at $1,000 a year to make $1 million a year or something like that. And getting 1,000 customers is hard enough. If I have to get 10,000 customers, it's almost impossible, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's that. And I also care like how this traffic, like how this growth is happening. I care about what their tactic is. I care about if everything is coming from the App Store. I care about if they know how they're growing, because very often you would see SaaS founders, they have no idea. Like they do a little bit of Facebook ads, they do a little bit of YouTubers, they do a little bit of everything, and then when I look at it, I don't know how they grew, and I don't know if I can replicate that, right? So what I'm looking at, I want to have a machine that you put a certain amount of money and it produces some results, or you just get a certain amount of installs every month because of the ranking on SEO or like YouTube or the App Store, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, it goes without saying, like based on what you're saying, and this is something that I feel like a lot of sellers don't really get right, is that they're so focused on the product and the marketing, but they're not so focused on, attribution, or even just some of the fundamental metrics behind their business, and they can't really answer those questions usually. unless we do a good job of like helping them through that sort of thing. Is that sort of what you see a lot of the time, Ruslan, or?
Yeah, like, most people don't look professional on their listings. Let's be honest. Most people. So what does it mean to look professional, right? It means that you're on top of your business. It means that you have solid P&Ls that I can easily understand. How much? So like the easier I can understand it, the better. You don't have to look. Again, in general, in life, if someone tries to sound smart, it means they don't know what they're talking about. Like a 5-year-old should be able to look at like your numbers and understand what's going on. I should be able to understand your churn easily. I should be able to understand how you're growing easily. I want that to be very well documented. So I know, okay, this is the app, this is what it's doing, is that market is growing like that, this is the strategy it's doing, it's losing or it's making that much money. And I need to understand what's happening behind the scenes, like what's the actual work being done. If you have well documented company generally, and not in terms of knowledge base, just like a package of, okay, this is my business, understand it, then it puts you in the top 10% of apps, because people will say, okay, this is a professional person that is on top of their business, so probably their business is well managed.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so on that, I would then ask, I mean, I love a red flag or two, and finding those red flags. What are the common red flags that you have seen in analyzing some companies? Like, so you said already you want to understand, is the business growing in terms of MRR? You want to understand their churn. What are some other things that you look for to notice that there's a red flag, or some easy tests that you can do straight away?
So number one red flag is reviews. If they have shit reviews, it's a major red flag. Yeah. Like to some extent, right? But especially like recent reviews, if people haven't looked at it, like if they haven't been working with
fake reviews, can you tell if there are fake reviews as well? Is there a tool that you can use to kind of identify fake reviews?
So on the Shopify App Store, that's one of the major ranking factors. So Shopify is very aggressive in getting rid of fake reviews. There are still fake reviews. Yeah. But in general, like they are trying really hard, and most apps don't have fake reviews. Okay. I believe. Reviews are a big one. Churn is an interesting one, because especially if you grow through the App Store, you're going to have a lot of uninstalls because many of the stores on Shopify open and close all the time. So churn in general on Shopify apps is way higher. You can expect probably 30% of your customers just closing their store anyway. So that's that. And if the company is losing money, it can be a major red flag. And
if the what, sorry?
If the company is losing money, or especially if it's losing money, like in some kind of, cost of goods sold way, right? So maybe the infra cost is way too high, or they're selling at a very low margin their services, this kind of stuff. That can be a really big red flag. Yeah. And in general, just using the product. If the product is complete pile of garbage, then it's also a red flag. It's not on the balance sheet, but if you know when you see it, right? Yeah.
Okay. And with kind of challenges that you see, or potential red flags that you see, right? They reflect some of the internal issues of a company, or internal issues of a founder due to them not controlling the controllables and not doing a good job in certain things, whether it be their product or marketing. But what would you say are some of the external threats of Shopify that you see when you're looking at things like, Shopify developments and updates? How do you stay ahead of trends that you can see? What are the kind of uncontrollables or things that are beyond your control when you're dealing with Shopify apps as an owner?
Well, look, first, you don't have much control. Being on a platform, it has inherited the risk. Yeah. And the reality is, on Shopify, you can get delisted for, like, even if it's not your fault, or like you can get banned or something. Or like if it's not your fault, still you can appeal, and they're very responsive and stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, like policies can change, or the company can move into a direction, or Shopify can build their own version of your app, and this kind of stuff. It's very similar to having an app on iOS. Again, it's the same thing, right? Apple can build the same app, or like they can change their policies.
Or even a platform like, you know, being on Amazon or Google, you basically got to choose your overlord by the sounds of it.
Yeah, exactly. But look, like, what's a good sign is first, you're not doing something that kind of feels shady on the platform, right? So that's one thing. Second thing, your app has some kind of complexity for a particular type of customer, so it's not just the basic version. I think that's very good, because even if Shopify builds like the basic app for that, you can still like have a more complicated version for, you know, like the power users or for this particular type of users. And if your app is niche, that's great as well, because again, if it's a niche market, nobody's gonna attack you, right? Because it's a small market, Shopify doesn't care, or like somebody else. But also, it's not just Shopify, right? For example, at ZipChat, we work also with OpenAI. So we have 2 times the platform risk. We have platform risk from Shopify, we have platform risk from OpenAI. We have platform risk for Stripe, because we have some customers that are not on Shopify, and we charge them through Stripe. So at the end, when you're doing some kind of a SaaS, you're always an integrator, and you always have different kinds of platform risk, and that's normal. You just need to put it into your calculations, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And I think from a geographical point of view, and from like different markets, right? The beauty of globalization now and online businesses is you can certainly have the reach across the world, with SaaS in general or online businesses in general, but particularly Shopify. You know, whether you're in Bulgaria, Bosnia, Netherlands, Australia, you know, you can own businesses and get a global outreach. What are the challenges that you see, or are there any? Yeah, I'm sure there are challenges, of course, in the different markets between Europe and the US when navigating, like from regulation perspective. Are there any regulations, or you know, maybe you're not aware of them, but what are the challenges that you see when you're trying to run a business, you know, out of Sofia, but catering for potentially customers all over the world?
The really cool thing about Shopify, it's a very global market. So you kind of build for the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, like some of the other bigger markets there. And when we look at markets in e-com tools, we think about platforms more than we think about geographies. And sometimes they are connected, like there are local platforms.
Sure.
But in majority of the cases, you just have the same customer base no matter where you're from. And many of the app developers are from India. You have Eastern Europe, you have all over the world. You have developers that you can't really know who built that. Of course, I think sales is really hard to do. So if you're like someone coming from Eastern Europe, or like not Australia, but like India, or somewhere that's not in the States, I think it's harder to do sales unless you hire someone. But what you can do is you can do local sales, and that's kind of something we do, right? We try to sell in Europe. We start doing things that the US companies cannot do, right? They cannot come to Europe and sell here. So you can use it as your advantage. And the other thing is the markets are changing. So for example, now India is growing so much in Shopify, and there's so many apps that now build local solutions for local Shopify merchants. Similar things are happening in Eastern Europe as well. So you can solve a specific problem that's for your geography, for people that are trying to use Shopify as well. So Majority of the cases, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it matters.
Yeah, of course. And I think the beauty of, from a product point of view, you can provide to customers around the world, but also the nature of an online business is when you exit and sell, you have that same freedom to also exit to different buyers around the world as well. So I remember we were talking last week, and you were telling me when you sold your business, was it Vanguard or sorry, what was the name of the Vanguard. I remember you explaining to me how it hit you, where you realized, oh wow, this is actually worth something, right? And this is what, because who did you sell it to, or maybe not the name, but like, from where was that person from where you sold it?
It's a Canadian company.
Canadian,
It's basically a guy like me doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Actually, he told me to start acquiring companies because we were talking after that, and he told me, this is what you should do. I think you're going to be good at it. And I thought about it, and I was like, okay, let's try. But funny thing, like 8 months after selling the company, we were in touch, and he told me, you should give it a try. So a really cool guy, Brio Commerce. They have 4 great apps. So if anyone has a Shopify app, check them out. One is built by me originally, so like I'm incentivized to say it's a good app.
No bias.
But yeah, it's a Canadian guy doing the same thing, same hustle. Yeah. I mean, you get that. Also, were you going to say something, Kristen?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'd like to get your perspective on, like, because what you're doing right now, like you're effectively like investing in digital assets, right? Versus something else that you can invest in, like, I don't know, crypto, property, that sort of thing. So do you give much like sort of consideration of like, this is like an asset type, and the upside on this of like the ROI is like, if you know what you're doing and you're confident in this, like you're not going to get an ROI like this anywhere else, unless you're diving deep into like crypto or something. But even then, it's a bit of a gamble in that sense. So I mean, do you give much consideration into like other asset types that aren't even like online assets in that sense?
Well, look, I have a portfolio that I manage. I have real estate, I have crypto, I have stocks, this kind of stuff. But I look at those as passive investments because I do just like I buy Bitcoin, right? And I buy S&P 500. I'm not active in that thing.
Yeah.
And there I'm looking more for what preservation. So like I'm looking at, my goal is to beat inflation. That's my ultimate goal with those type of investments.
Okay.
Whereas what I'm doing here, buying like software assets and trying to grow them, I see it as an active investment, or like buying a job. I don't know, like depends on what you prefer. And I'm hoping to do way bigger returns. My objective is to do 50% return on investment year over year, which I believe is doable. And that's something you cannot achieve passively with any investment type.
No, definitely. Yeah. Especially capital side of things as well.
Yeah, but I believe you should do what you know, right? So
absolutely.
If I knew crypto, I would be doing crypto. But my goal is to be the best Shopify / e-com tool, like acquirer / seller. That's my goal, and I believe I have a chance of doing that. Maybe there's 100 people or 1,000 people in that category that I can compete with, and I can do it at a good level. Whereas if it's crypto, I have no idea. I have to get into it.
Okay. And maybe a bit on the spot, but how do you differentiate yourself from the others out there? Because there are a lot of acquirers, right? There's very large acquirers that are raising tons of money. Of course, you're going in at maybe an earlier point in time when you're looking to acquire a business. But how do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, that's a very good topic. So the cool thing is you don't have to compete one-on-one. Like I think it's more of a positive sum game. And I talk to many of those guys, and we refer deals and this kind of stuff. But in general, so first is my weight class, right? So I'm looking for acquisitions from 200,000 to probably 600,000, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very different from some of the bigger guys. And also, I'm trying to build a personal brand to be approachable. I share everything I learn, and like numbers and my lessons on my blog. I talk to the community. I try to be part of it. I try to work well with the guys out there. And the other thing I'm doing is, for example, with ZipChat, I didn't buy out everyone, so I can get on people to stay, and I can help them grow their business. And that's something very different from for example, some of the aggregators. That, of course, you can stay on, but they own the business. Where with me, potential is to become a co-founder and to grow more. I'm trying different things. But I guess if I grow more, I'll become more like them, right? Because I'll have more leverage and I have to move up my weight class. We'll see.
Okay, cool. And I guess moving on to the last topic, some advice for sellers. So what advice you've gone through it yourself as a seller, now you're a buyer, but what advice would you offer to SaaS entrepreneurs looking to position their apps for potential acquisition? I mean, there's that, but also what are some common mistakes or misconceptions that you've seen sellers do as you've been sitting on the buyer desk? How do you feel that sellers in general can best prepare themselves for an exit?
I think you need to first keep good records, right? You need to know your churn, your growth mechanics, your P&L, these kind of stuff. Good
deal hygiene, being organized. Yeah, we covered that in episode 1 on those. But it's good to hear that from you as well.
Something else is to have like a transfer plan. So like sit down and imagine, even before you have a deal on the table, like let's say we sign a deal, how am I gonna transfer that business, and like write step by step and see where it might have a problem and start planning for that. So it might be something technical that you need to do. It might be something like business wise, this kind of stuff. And third, figure out if you want to sell now for money, or you want to sell if someone like gives you a great deal. That's also like different mindset, right? So one is you list on the market and you say, okay, this is a meaningful multiple, let's see if there are buyers. Another one is you just sit down and wait for a way higher number and someone to show up and say, look, like I'm a strategic buyer, I'm gonna give you that money because it brings a lot of added value to my business. And something that I think is a great nugget that we talked with Dominic on one of the past events is to change your business model to be completely MRR driven. I think that's super important. So like get rid of any one-time sales, get rid of usage charges as much as you can, unless it's hurting your business model. Because MRR is the golden standard for acquisitions. So if you have MRR compared to if you have usage charges or one-time sales.
That's super great insight there, Ruslan. I've got a follow-up question on that. So, I find, particularly in the SaaS and apps space, that a lot of sellers in this space, really don't have their financials in order. Or sometimes even don't really understand what a profit and loss is, believe it or not. But like in terms of how you manage the profit and loss, were you using like a bookkeeper, or were you using like a particular type of bookkeeping software for more particular for this type of asset?
So for Vanga it was a mess because we're a company that had like multiple products all under the same salary, software providers. How do you split that? Some things you can split, some things you cannot. So for Vanga, it was a total mess. I had to go back and look at my bank statements and try to figure out what expense was for Vanga, what was for my other businesses. Yeah. Sometimes split it, and then try to explain that to the seller. It was really hard. Yeah. For ZipChat, we're blessed to have a bookkeeper that just gives us a P&L report. And it's great because I can actually, in 1 minute, understand what's happening in the business overview. Like, that's great. So if you can have a bookkeeper doing that,
it's worth the investment. 100%.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Honestly.
I mean, even with like some of the automated softwares that you can use, like as you said, there's particular cases that, you know, I come from an accounting background myself, so, you know, it's easy to be able to like figure out a system to be able to do that. But, you know, if you're trying to just do it yourself, you know, it ends up taking, you're basically just pushing the workload out to prior to selling rather than, you know, doing it. And also, you know, if you got the financials in order, you can actually see, you know, what you're actually making in the business, right? Yeah, so that's very interesting to hear.
To be honest, it's so important that I'm thinking of picking up some like accounting classes and this kind of stuff, just to understand better. Because
you're the real deal.
Because, you know, like when we talk about these kind of terms, I kind of understand them, but I don't really understand them, right? And at the end of the day,
that's for sure.
At the end of the day, like if you're a businessman, you can learn these things, but if you want to be serious about it, and for me personally, I want to buy and sell companies, like I need to understand the nature of what I'm dealing with financially.
I fully agree.
I mean, I totally understand, you know, why that doesn't happen, you know, because you're so busy and like you're not in the business of like just tracking financials, right? But, you know, you did bring a very good point into delegating that to a bookkeeper, but not only a bookkeeper, but a bookkeeper that actually knows the industry that you're in, as a bonus. So, yeah, definitely a good insight there.
Cool. Yeah, well, a question that we will always ask our guests, again, more from my perspective, because I love reading, I also love listening to a podcast or two. So, Ruslan, what's the most recent podcast or book you've read that you got a lot out of?
You guys should read my blog.
Okay.
I had a bit of a look through just before we started recording, but I'm definitely interested in some of the content you got there, so I'll be checking that out.
Yeah, if someone's listening, just Google my name or Perplexity AI my name, or if you can say that.
We'll put it in the podcast notes for sure. Yeah.
But look, there is a lot of stuff. I think this podcast is great. I recently, so for this kind of stuff, I read the Micro Angel blog, and I read it's so much stuff.
Okay.
But it's basically another Canadian guy buying Shopify apps, and he's documenting his journey. I got very inspired by him to write my own blog, so totally recommend her. And again, if you open my blog and you don't read, you can find it because it's on Substack, so you can just click.
Oh, great. Okay. Cool.
All right. I'll have to give them a shout out too.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, look, Ruslan, thank you again for your time. It's always good to chat with you and, you know, get some nice insights. You know, we'll put, obviously, in the podcast notes, a link to your website, because I'm sure our listeners can get a lot out of reading some of your blogs and can also read more about you and your journey. But yeah, once again, like, really appreciate your time. You know, what we're trying to do here is really educate a lot of our listeners and our community on like M&A in general, but also specific to online businesses. And we just want to make the information very accessible in a very kind of conversation-friendly manner. And I'm sure, you know, our goal is that listeners take at least 2 or 3 things out of each podcast, tangible things. And I'm sure there's many things that people got out over the last 45 minutes or so. So once again, really thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.